Hi, this is Joanne, CFO of Jellyfish, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
Hi, it's Jack Sweeney, host of the CFO Thought Leader podcast, and I'm here in Miami at Planful's Perform 25 annual conference for a special on-location episode of CFO Thought Leader. On this episode, we'll be speaking with Planful CEO Grant Halloran, who will explain why the notion of AI eliminating jobs must just flat out be rejected within the ranks of accounting and finance professionals and deemed unacceptable in light of what is an escalating talent shortage among accounting and finance types. As we move into the future, it's only going to get worse. Next, we'll be speaking with Planful CFO Dan Fletcher, who will explain how during his latest CFO chapter, he is extending his lines of sight into the product usage realm. Along the way, I'll also share some of my spot reporting with you as I ask a number of attendees to share their FP&A priorities for the coming 12 months. So let's kick this off. This episode, on location, Miami, Perform 25. Let's make it happen. Hi, it's Jack Sweeney with CFO Thought Leader, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to sit down with Grant Halloran at here in Miami at Planful's Perform 25. Grant, great to have time with you here.
Awesome, Jack. Great to see you again.
You know, I wanted to begin with the thought that you emphasized during this morning's keynote.
And I just want to also be really clear that while there are companies, software companies out there that tout one of the big benefits of AI is job elimination, that is not our mission at Planful. I want to be unequivocal and unapologetic about that. Given the numbers that I shared earlier, our mission is to simply make it possible to execute all these processes that you guys run, make it possible for you to do that without having to hire more people. Together, we have to succeed. We must drive huge productivity gains into finance and accounting. We must do it. Otherwise, we are just not going to overcome this problem. At the more micro level, inside your business, I want you to imagine what that's going to be like in three more years when you cannot get the talent. It's a problem. It's not going to go away.
Because there's going to be a need for people, I think is what you're emphasizing. You brought out the shortage, and I think you also brought out the transformational opportunity that is we're all seeing on the horizon. Can you reflect a little more on that for us?
Yes. So I think there's two factors that go behind this thought. First is that we do have globally quite a crisis in terms of a talent deficit. Finance and accounting professionals, some estimate it's at least 3 million folks. And as we talked about, 75% of CPAs are entering retirement age in the next decade. And the cavalry isn't coming. The juniors that you would hope are going to kind of fill all these spots. Unfortunately, CPA exam graduation is at an all-time low, and it's declined 20% in the last since 2015. So they're not coming, and so you need to get more productivity more generally, right? This is a existential threat, frankly, to be able to execute these processes in your business. The other side of the coin, I think, is one ought to have a growth mindset. We talked a little bit about this earlier, and I think it pertains to software generally, is that, everything that we do inside a business has now the opportunity to be automated and automated more more quickly, right? So the focus on that, especially for us, is going to enable finance accounting people to just do more high value work, right? So if we go out into the future, 5-10 years from now, we overcome the talent deficit by driving more productivity and enabling the folks that are in those roles to actually just do high cognition work. And that's really the vision. So I don't think it's about, hey, we can go and eliminate a bunch of jobs. It's about we can drive our business into the future and automate more and use software faster and better in our businesses, grow our companies without necessarily having to grow our workforces at necessarily the same speed.
Wanted to just narrow the lens then quickly to forecasting. And there was another thought I heard at a different session, the idea that representing more people and departments in the forecasting process, more contributors. Can you reflect a little more on where you see customer organizations headed as far as growing numbers of contributors to the forecasting process?
Yeah, the reality is that finance professionals are partners to the business. They have the highest financial IQ, if you like, and they're trying to impact the business decisions in the company. But those decisions are ultimately done by the people that control the money, right? Those that are responsible for managing the operating expense budgets and the CapEx budgets in IT, responsible for revenue generation in the company, right? These are the folks that actually have to make those decisions on a day-to-day basis. Now, when it comes to forecasting, this is a very complex process across lots of those budget owners, in a business, and finance can only go so far, right? So a lot of what we see is a lot of the friction is in how do we gather the inputs from the business people? How do we get them to contribute updates to the forecast as we execute against the plan throughout the year? So our mission really, in the last few years, we've been reflecting a lot on that. We've been bringing out new experiences inside the Planful software that are tailor-made for budget owners. And to just give you one key statistic, our goal is to have any budget owner in a business be able to contribute to, say, a monthly forecast process in 30 seconds, right? So you don't have to have this high financial IQ. It's just, can we filter down the thing that we need you to do? Yeah. Strip away all the complexity. Finance people love the complexity of their spreadsheets and the software and everything. But for the budget owners, we want them just precisely to know exactly what they need to do there and effectively open something, contribute to it, press go and get back to their job. Okay. So that's one example of how we're executing on that.
Is there a certain size organization where you see the contributions coming from more departments than other size organizations?
It's not so much a size question. It's a willingness to embrace the idea that in finance you are a steward of the process. You don't do all the work in the process. Yeah. Okay. So when you take that mindset to it, we have customers that have 1,500 users that are making daily and weekly operational decisions inside based on the data that Planful is generating for them. This is a very large company, multi-billion-dollar company, around 10 billion, I believe. 1,500 users doing that. You can have smaller companies that are in the hundreds of millions, and they're fostering that greater collaboration. I think that it's the same issue in terms of the change management. You have to have that mindset. You have to communicate it to the business. You have to say, here's the win for you, because you're going to get more accurate information from us. We're going to be able to give you your actuals, your variance analysis, the explanations and interpretations of that far more quickly. And if the hundreds of you can contribute through our process, we will get you back the information you need very quickly. So it's about thinking about how you're communicating it and creating a win-win for everybody.
You have stated in the past a shared language of value creating metrics are what keep you and your CFO Dan Fletcher in lockstep. And I wanted to ask you, what measures have proven most effective when aligning strategy, finance, and the broader organization?
Well, in our company, in software, really where the business happens is in what we call the operational and commercial metrics, right? So the vast majority of financial metrics are backward looking. This is what happened. This was the plan. Yeah. This is what happened. Here's the variances. So where we tend to spend a lot more of our time is down in the deeper layers, commercial metrics such as, sales pipeline and conversion metrics through sales pipeline. Those are, those are super important for you to understand and get understand where the business is heading, get accurate forecasts and things like that, right? So it's very much what are the drivers in the business. But then you go a level below that, operational data. So, we have dashboards in our business that effectively create a customer 360 is a term a lot of people have used, but we take application usage telemetry. We look at that. We build alerts and triggers on top of that. So we can take that information, and we can get insights into how that actually could predict potential churn and give our teams that information and say, hey, this is your opportunity to go and intervene. See what's happening, see why that usage has changed, which is going to drive ultimately a financial impact, which is retention of the customer. So I think the smartest finance teams really understand the delineation between finance, commercial, and operational data and know exactly what information, how it all works together and how they can empower the organization with that information. So that's the first thing. I would say that secondly, Dan and I spent a lot of time talking about the fact we have too much information. So we're always trying to filter down to the holy grail, which is, what are the top 5 or 10 metrics that really matter the most.
Yeah.
And those change over time. So we got to revisit from time to time.
And there are some of the conversations that I've heard here and elsewhere, I guess. I think it's fair to say when it comes to AI adoption within companies, inside the tech sector, engineering teams are often the sort of the primary influencers of adoption, or maybe the foremost. However, in non-tech industry where the engineering muscle is not as pronounced, perhaps, here we see FP&A teams maybe playing a larger role. Would you agree with that observation, or aren't FP&A teams playing a pretty critical role in some companies today as far as AI adoption? They're the collaborators.
Yeah, I think so. They certainly are. We see it, for example, we have a co-innovation council where we intentionally just said, look, we want to invite volunteers from the customer base. So, software companies have formal things like customer advisory boards, and a lot of that conversation is longer term. It's not as tactically involved with what we do, right? It's more meet, every quarter, talk about direction of the company. How can we improve our services to you? Mm-hmm. So those folks are important. But the co-innovation council, was where we said, hey, finance, accounting folks that we serve, who really wants to lean in on the AI side of things and get hands-on with us? Okay. So we're talking about weekly calls, weekly reviews of content. We're talking about early adoption into the sandbox environments, etc. We were inundated with demand from folks. we initially reserved for 20 people. Yep. I think we had like 60, 70 people. So that was a really strong indication that there is definitely an appetite for leaning into the AI. A lot of CFOs are definitely asking their teams, hey, we need to get ahead of this because everything we're reading, my CEO, my CIO, the boards are asking us, what are we doing about this? Now, as it pertains to more broadly in an enterprise, my experience is that if the CEO and the executive leadership team is talking a lot about this and making a big deal. So, for example, in our company, we have AI power user awards. Okay, so we make a big deal about it, and we have our town hall, the whole company. We actually, shout out these people. We have a lot of stuff in our messaging systems about and channels that do this. We've enabled so far at least half of our company have enterprise AI licenses to be able to actually build custom GPTs and do all that sort of cool stuff, right? So I think it's actually happening much more quickly organically throughout companies. And I would encourage business leaders to allow that to happen and then start to bring some programmatic sort of discipline to it. Let's just see, how does your company adopt it? Yeah. The big message for everyone is like, you're either going to, AI is not going to come for your job. Somebody, we talked about this earlier, somebody else that is AI first in the way they do things is going to come for your job.
Right. Do you think the cloud era offers a point of comparison or not really in terms of CFO leadership? It seems like, from what I recall, CFOs were at first perhaps cautious and skeptical about putting all the information up in the cloud. And then they kind of flipped where they became some of their company's foremost champions of new tools and cloud, leveraging the cloud. They saw the economics behind it.
Yes.
They saw the realities of it. Is that what we're experiencing now? Will we see AI, the CFO leaders being somewhat skeptical? And would that work against them? I mean, because there's a certain amount of speed to this adoption that wasn't, I think will make cloud adoption look like a slow.
Yeah, I think the similarity, it's a good question. I think the similarity between the two is the focus on security, right?
Yeah.
The technologies, we talked a lot about it at our conference here, how it's not necessarily that simple to take the security models that you already have in place, like the privileges. So Jack can, see certain information in the Planful system, and I can see different information. Those privileges and permissions need to be honored by any AI that you implement into the system. So I don't think it's necessarily skepticism. I think it's just caution and care. And that's the right thing to do. Fortunately, as I sit here, I'd say we're the gold standard of security, and we've made sure that our AI technologies honor all of those existing security permissions and SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3 compliant, HIPAA compliant, all those sorts of things. So caution and care is the right thing to do. The big difference here is that the speed of change with the AI, of improvement with the AI functionalities that, we're bringing out and what we're observing, the speed of change and improvement is so dramatically different to every other previous technology force. What you think,
could there be a higher price to pay for that caution in this era where things move so quickly?
Unquestionably. You're just, if you narrow in on finance and accounting teams, these guys they're just running on fumes right now. And every CFO I know, they tend to operate at the speed of thought. They ask a lot of questions. They want a lot of information, and they want it super quickly, and that's only accelerating. So the pressure on your teams is crazy. And so we're saying the businesses that are the most proactive, frankly, they're creating an environment where folks are going to want to work, and they're going to want to be, and the others will burn out and leave and go to those places. So you got to do that for that reason, but also just the amount of insight and the speed you can get. Just one quick anecdote is that we've had customers tell us that have been early adopters of the AI functionality that they've been able to perform tasks that were hitherto would have taken 20 hours. They've been able to do in like 2, 3, 4 minutes. Okay, so wow. That's phenomenal. You increase the cycle time, that decision velocity is going up in the business. This is exactly what every CFO and CEO wants.
If you were to try to assess what the characteristics of those early adopters, what do they share in common? What, from your quick study, what would you tell us?
A couple of things. Firstly, they have really good technology partners like Planful, so that they can count on.
They're leaning on you.
They lean on. Yeah, I think the very best way for a CFO and their teams to think about this is let's lean on our vendors first.
Yeah.
They're in Silicon Valley. They're at the cutting edge of this stuff. Let's go and see what they can do and bring to us. Okay. That's the first thing. Second, they've got a test and learn methodology or a mindset. More importantly, right? They're willing to go and experiment. They're willing to say to their teams, hey, join that early adopter program. Go and find out how it works. We're not going to break anything because, the way it's set up is that you're running true experiments and you're seeing and contribute to the vendor's roadmap, contribute to, what they're building for us. Prioritize, make sure that the vendor understands the value that we can get. They prioritize the use cases, the way that we think is going to drive most value for us. If we get more value very quickly, then that's going to snowball into more adoption and more ideas. And that's the smartest approach to it. The more you just kind of sit back and passive on the sidelines waiting for this stuff, you're just missing out on all those cycles that are necessary to foster excitement and adoption.
If we can, would love to have you just jump into the future. 3 years we've been talking about the shortage of talent and what have you, how that's going to compound over time. To be a member of an FP&A team in the future here, will the FP&A team be roughly the same size? And any predictions you can make as to what, or organizationally, what the FP&A team is going to be comprised of, the type of talent, the size?
Yeah. My prediction is that if you fast forward 10 years from now, I would say that let's just say a prototypical company is twice as size or 3 times or 4 times bigger. They're most likely to be able, if they're smart and do the things that we've just talked about, I think they could run the office of CFO on the same size team they have today.
And their backgrounds would be more diverse than today.
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer that the number one skill set that will define like the elite finance professionals is domain knowledge, understanding of the business that they work in, understanding of the industry that they work in, the forces at play, because they need to. The technology that we're talking about, effectively, it eliminates a lot of low value, low cognition work. In fact, it'll probably eliminate all of that, right? It'll automate that. What it enables you to do is high cognition work at unprecedented speed. So, but I'm a little bit cautious about AI being able to truly understand a business. Can understand numbers. We're teaching it how to understand numbers and what matters in numbers, right? But understanding the dynamics of a complex company and a complex industry and a complex geopolitical environment, like AI is a long way off from being able to do anything useful on that level. Okay. So it behooves the finance teams to say, how am I going to use all this time of mine that I have back? It's going to be contributing to these strategic decisions. So domain knowledge is going to be critical. I think fundamentally understanding numbers, financial literacy is still really, really important because you can't just rely on the AI to, you've got to be able to interpret what it's talking about. There's data, there's explanations, and there's actions. At some point, someone's got to make a decision. What do we do with this? Right. The AI, we're a long way off before you empower AI to just start autonomously making decisions for you, frankly, in the finance world.
Grant Halloran, thank you for making time for us here at Planful's Perform 25.
Always a pleasure, Jack. Thank you.
Hey, it's Jack Sweeney of CFO Thought Leader, and I'm here with Nick Posthumus, who's Senior Director of Finance for Starkey Hearing and Technologies. Nick, right off the bat, let's talk about your priorities going forward for the next 12 months. What are those FP&A priorities that you have for the coming 12 months?
One of our number one priorities, people costs are our biggest spend item, as with most companies. So really trying to get kind of that magic bullet and really know when's the appropriate time to stop hiring more people incrementally and when are the right times to really grow and what can the business support.
Nick, how about one milestone that was met within the last 12 months, an FP&A milestone of some kind?
With our most recent budget process, we really made an effort to make it less of an event for the non-finance people. So the business leaders have to be involved, of course, but we didn't want it to be a huge event for them.
I love that. Less of an event, folks. Thank you, Nick, for talking to us.
Of course. Thank you.
Hi, it's Jack Sweeney, host of CFO Thought Leader, and we're pleased to have Dan Fletcher make time for us here at Planful's Perform 25 in Miami. Dan, it's been a while. Thank you for allowing us to sit down with you.
Yeah, absolutely. This has almost become an annual tradition for you and I since 2019.
It has. We have chatted from time to time over the years. Here you are, again, a CFO of a tech company that specializes in serving, the financial management ranks with tools and, software to help them do their jobs. But within the company, your CEO and every employee in the company is sort of scrutinizing your role or looking at it and trying to identify the pain points. How can we do this a little differently? And it offers you a great spotlight, I would think, in the company, but also something of a burden, like everybody's overlooking your shoulder or what have you. How do you think about it?
Yeah. Well, you and I have chatted about it in the past. So
Yeah.
this is in a way, it's my third CFO role. First, I was at Planful. I then went to be CFO of a database company.
Right.
And when that company was sold, Grant Halloran, our CEO here, called me and asked me if I'd like to come back to Planful for the long haul.
Yeah.
And it was not a hard decision for me. And that's to your point. It's such a unique role to be able to be supporting a team and a company that serves me, that serves my team. And it is unique. It is exciting, though.
That's what, and I was speaking to some FP&A professionals yesterday, and one of them was explaining to me they come here because they want to know how to get the rest of their organization involved in forecasting. And I stopped to think about you and how you must wander through the Planful office sometimes and try to contemplate the same thing. How do I get more of them involved in my forecast? And how do I do that so I can pass that along to my customers and demonstrate how I do it to get more of these other functional areas aware and involved in, the business?
Yeah, well, we have a very frequent saying at Planful that planning is a team sport.
Yeah.
And that comes as much from an internal philosophy in the sense that that's how we operate our own financial operations, as it comes from our thought leadership to our customers. And what that looks like is you break it down. You've got your top line forecasting and your expense forecasting. And yes, the top line forecasting will always involve mostly the go-to-market teams. Also the product teams, but the go-to-market teams. But the expense forecasting involves everyone. Every single person in the entire org has some role in that expense forecast. And so we boil it down to getting them in the tool and then providing them the human partnership to make sure they know how to use it right with the right guardrails. And it results in a really smart forecast.
Getting them in the tool, do they enjoy greater visibility once they can access the tool? I mean, isn't it about visibility or?
Yeah. And when we say they, we are predominantly talking about budget owners.
Right.
So operational budget owners and the data teams that support them. Usually there's one internal analyst or quasi-analyst on a team, say HR, on product, who is helping the budget owner kind of understand the numbers. So what it looks like specifically is at a minimum dashboard. So read access, looking at their headcount roll forward, looking at natural accounts. Where are they running hot? Where are they running cold? At a minimum, a monthly basis. We call it the BVA meetings, the budget versus actual.
Yeah.
So they get a finance meeting every month to help them go over their numbers, reallocate capital, dial back here, lean in there. And that results in both an enhanced forecast and just better operations, better decision making.
Last time we talked, I believe you talked about a weekly meeting that you hold.
Yes.
And I'm not going to be specific about which ones. Tell us something about meetings and how you've done away with certain ones, how you might have added some. What is your philosophy around meetings when you think that?
Yeah, I have a high bar for recurring meetings. That's my philosophy, that if you are going to have a recurring meeting, there needs to be a very strong why.
Yeah.
As in you're looking for decisions and action that come out on a weekly cadence, say, or a monthly cadence. And everything else I think should be ad hoc. And you need to make yourself available. The weekly meeting is top line forecasting. So we reforecast our business really on a daily basis.
Who's in that meeting?
So in that meeting, you would have the sales leadership,
Yeah.
you would have finance, you would have the executive team. So it's an executive leadership team meeting with sales, with finance.
When you talk to other CFOs, do you ever talk about your meetings philosophy or what they do and what they don't do? Are you surprised by what you hear?
Yeah. I think the conversations I do. The short answer is I do talk with other CFOs about meetings, and it breaks down into two veins of conversation. One is I have too many meetings. How do you dial them back?
Yeah.
And the other is, we don't meet with the most important people often enough. And so it's ironic, the tension between those two things. You could see a world where you dial back on the too many meetings and rebucket some of that to the critical people. And by the critical people, I mean, you find CFOs saying we don't meet with product enough. We don't meet with the supply chain enough, but we're constantly talking to sales, for example, right? And so there's a potential rebalancing there to make sure you're getting a holistic view of the business and not just always waiting toward that volatile top line group.
Your CEO yesterday shared a number of numbers that were a measure of success. I think it was 250 new customers, and it was 35% growth in headcount. What do you, as the finance leader, how do you measure success?
Well, certainly in the results, the ROI is important. And the leading indicators as well. We're obsessed with leading indicators in our business. We believe we have our fingers on the right data to tell us where we're headed. And so I'm spending a lot of time looking at the leading indicators and making capital allocation decisions as appropriate. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I'm looking for that specific KPI.
Oh, okay.
That you're about to.
Yeah. So I would say two flavors of KPIs that I am all over all the time. It is everything to do with new pipeline generation.
Okay.
And that is certainly in this environment segmented by industry, by geo, and by customer segment size. And we're slicing it all those different ways to understand where we're resonating in the market, what parts of the market might be pulling back as they're worried about the macro. And so it's not a novel answer, Jack.
Where does that pipeline visibility happen? Within Salesforce, or what is it that you're looking at that indication that an account is nearing?
Certainly. So Salesforce is the system of record for new pipeline, but we pull it through an integration into Planful where we have our segmentation tables set up. So it's almost a BI use case.
Okay. Is the sales team then entering that information, or?
Oh, I hope not. As much as I love the sales team.
So forgive me, walk me through a little bit of that.
Well, when an SDR or an AE registers an opportunity in Planful, that is now part of the company's data, and it's very specifically curated. Who can touch it? Who can advance it in stage? Who can change the dollar amounts? So yes, sales has a strong responsibility to stay on top of updating those opportunities. But once they're pulled into the finance systems, we're then using them to project, to forecast, to analyze, and we don't want anybody manipulating at that point.
Are your customers realizing the potential of what you just described? Or are they having their sales team, is that happening within those customers? I know it is, but I'm just saying, is that
certainly
mature and robust as you like to see?
So I think we're talking about a tech company. Right. Planful is a tech company, and tech is only about 10% of our customer base. So the 10%, I met with several tech companies yesterday, two specifically, billion-dollar businesses in Silicon Valley. And yes, these folks understand how to forecast the top line in Planful using CRM data.
Right.
No question. It's different for a manufacturing business, a distribution business. They may not so much look at pipeline. They may be looking more at demand planning, SKU level demand forecasting. And so it's a different solution. Same idea to use Planful for it, but they would be in our, integrated development engine, dynamic planning, pulling in maybe more inventory type system.
I like your that point of comparison that you can make there. And I want to talk to you about AI, and I want to go back to that point of comparison. Are the non-tech companies, their adoption of AI technologies, does it differ from your technology customers? And I'm sure it does. But I'm wondering what you've observed in terms of the willingness of manufacturing customers and other customers outside the technology traditional realm, how they're adopting AI, maybe a little differently, or are they more timid? Are they?
Well, it's a great question. And like you preview there, you might expect that there's a difference. I haven't noticed a difference in the interest, in the key AI use cases. So that would be helping to administrate the system, helping to interrogate the data.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really exciting, right? An analyst working for you, and then ultimately to agents who will execute tasks for you. You find just as much interest in a $3 billion Midwest manufacturer as you'll find in a pharmaceutical company in Salt Lake City, as you'll find in a tech company in Silicon Valley. It's interesting.
We were talking to Grant yesterday about, well, who are the AI champions within Planful? And we know they can come from all sides of the company. But the engineering folks, software engineers, these are really advanced folks. Some are leveraging AI in all sorts of ways. It's not uncommon in the tech community to see a lot of AI influencers within that part of the organization. And what I was asking was, isn't it true in the non-tech sector that the FP&A professionals are some of the most fast or early adopters when it comes to AI? Aren't they the ones for their companies very often? They are the sort of emerging AI class of champions.
I think you're spot on. I think it would be in finance and in IT where I'm seeing the most sort of forward thinking in the broader economic sector of North America, certainly. I think it's the finance folks and the IT folks who are kind of at the forefront of thinking about Gen AI use cases.
As a CFO, say you're FI, and let's take you out of the tech sector.
Sure.
for a moment here. You're CFO of a manufacturing firm, and you realize that you would like to see the company begin to leverage AI more effectively across the company, and you're trying to inspire others to begin experimenting with language models. And as a CFO, the type of leadership now required to sort of drive that, is that a role that belongs to finance leadership, driving the champions in the company to emerge? I mean, what do you, and forgive me for not expressing that more.
I understand where you're going with it.
It's an important role.
I think the short answer is yes. So CFOs have a mandate to allocate capital in the business the right way to the highest ROI use cases, and ought to be thinking about the broad benefit to their business of leveraging generative AI tools. So from that lens of capital allocation, you have a seat at that table and you're one of the loudest voices. From an actual sort of outcomes perspective, I think the CFO should be all across any financial data that is being fed into Gen AI and any results we're getting out of it. I think you have that responsibility in the business so that you don't have hallucinations and all kinds of kind of privacy risks, security risks.
Right. And is the tenor of conversation happening there? Okay, a functional head has come and has wanted 100 new licenses for language models, different language models. And at the same time, they want, a dozen new hires. And the CFO says, well, let's wait 6 months on the hires and let's find out how your people can better leverage these licenses and see how we're doing. I mean, is that probably a familiar conversation for some of the CFOs? That's
the exact conversation. You are trying to figure out what you don't want as a result of Gen AI adoption is investing in the tools and getting no efficiency because of it. Right. And so you are trying to, this is the central struggle. You are trying to measure the ROI on the Gen AI investments in efficiency and better decision making. And it's a really tricky equation to complete at times.
What advice would you have for CFOs to achieve that?
Yeah, just make sure you understand the result you're trying to get, and that you can't. Let me put it this way. There's no way to understand the ROI unless you're measuring the results. And so you have to have some structure in place to capture the results. So, whether that's kind of a time study type thing, or whether it's measuring time to completion or measuring output, you have to have some way to measure what matters.
Last time we spoke, the acquisition of Plan A had happened only, I think, within the last 6 months. So it's quite in your rear view now. Plan A, a marketing performance company. And at the time, you talked about the opportunity to interconnect finance and marketing metrics. What have you learned? Were you able to do that? And is the alignment sustainable?
Yeah. So the company was called Plana. Now it's just
Plana.
Planful. And the thesis at the time was that Planful has a mission to serve the entire org, right? Planning is a team sport. We want to elevate the financial IQ of the entire company. The challenge we ran into is we went out to the operational groups, to marketing, to product, et cetera, is that they speak a different language.
Yeah.
And yet we're not in the business of just saying, go build whatever you need. We want to provide them with productized approaches to planning, forecasting, and analysis. And so we got that with our HR, our world-class workforce planning product. And the marketing acquisition was to complete that thesis for marketing. And it's gone very well. I think what we've seen is we have more marketing users in our platform than ever. And that's increasing at a rate of, faster than our overall user count, which is exactly what you want to see.
I want to just give some advice to CFOs out there. So I have just 2 more questions for you today. What makes a forecast actionable, and how do you keep teams focused on what really matters? Advice for CFOs out there. What makes a forecast actionable?
Well, first of all, hopefully it's accurate. An inaccurate forecast is not very actionable, or it will inspire the wrong kind of action. I think it all gets back to the word why. So you have a forecast, you spin it up, and then you need to spend the time to understand why different elements of the forecast are doing what they're doing, so that you can get to action. We have a DEA framework in the company: decision, execution, insights, decision, execution, action, right? And so the whole framework is designed to bring the data and pull out the insights and take action. Yeah, I kind of butchered that, but you get where I'm going.
What's a metric that you monitor that you never looked at 5 years ago?
Oh, I'm deep these days into product usage. So it's kind of a new frontier for me. In the tech world, we're able to plug into our backend systems like Jira and understand things like bugs per customer and the adoption curve and how many reports a customer is running and how many logins certain user types have. And why that's interesting is it's helpful to forecast retention and customer growth.
Yeah. What have you, any insights you can share there? Anything surprise you as you get deeper into the product usage piece of this?
Yeah, I think it gets back to capital allocation. And so this allows me to speak the same language as my CTO when he says we want to invest in a specific program around these 3 paper cuts that are 80% of our support tickets over the last 6 months. I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. I can see it in the data that this is bothering our customers. Everything we do is for our customers, so let's lean in, let's fix it. And then I want to watch those 3 incident reports go down over time.
Well, what would your CTO tell us about finance's visibility now deeper into that product usage? What has he learned?
I think he would say, I'm thrilled Dan is looking into this. Now he's speaking my language. It's, he and I, there's no daylight between us. He and I are both very, very convinced that Gen AI is going to be a macro sea change in finance. And, I've been willing to invest behind him. And we have a 50% increase in R&D expense over the prior period. And we've scaled that team. When you say 35% headcount growth, that team is specifically one of the big lean-ins, as is product management, where we, for example, 3X'd our accounting product management team. So,
well, Dan Fletcher, thank you so much for making time for us here at Planful's Perform 25.
Yeah, Jack, always a pleasure.
Hi, it's Jack Sweeney with CFO Thought Leader, and I'm here in Miami attending Planful's Perform 25 this week, catching up with some of the FP&A faithful at asking them about their top of mind priorities for the coming 12 months. Next, this is Matt Langford of Absolute Software. Here's Matt.
As we were looking at what do we do for our next fiscal year, and we're in the middle of our budget season because we have a July start to our fiscal year. And it was kind of a mix of tops-down direction from our CEO, who wants to see the company as a whole come to the table with ideas on how we can leverage AI. But as we were looking at what our team wants to do, we had a number of different ideas. One of them being, how do we incorporate AI better? And another being, how do we get other users in our financial planning system? And that was one of the things that kind of led us to wanting to come to this conference, was not just AI, but other tools, and see how we can get best practices for some of these things. The more an organization is going to grow, the more people will want to, the more people need to give input into the forecast. And as as an FP&A team, the answer can't be let's just hire more people to manage it. No CEO is going to like that question. And so for us, it's an issue of scale. How do we scale it efficiently? We know we're not going to be able to add 1 million FP&A analysts, so we need to cut out some of the menial tasks, drive greater visibility, do it in a way that's efficient. So I think that would be the goal there, is to help create that scale.